Welcome to Spotlight On, a new series produced by Accel, where we examine the technology shaping our world through conversations with the people building it.
Welcome to Spotlight On. I'm Steve Laughlin, partner at Accel, and we're so fortunate to have Cai GoGwilt, the CTO and co-founder of Ironclad, here with us today. So thank you, Cai, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
And I think, I know you go by Cai, but recently you've been going by AI because you've had a name change, which is a full commitment to your company.
The running joke at the company for a while has been, you can't spell Cai without AI.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here. I know that there's a lot of exciting things happening for Ironclad, happening in the software ecosystem right now. But why don't we start with just a level set, kind of what Ironclad is, this company that you guys started. How long ago? What year did you guys found the company?
2014.
2014.
So coming up on 9 years now.
Okay. And what do you guys do? What's the mission of the company? What is Ironclad all about?
So Ironclad is a digital contracting platform, and our mission is to power the world's contracts. So the oldest piece of business technology is the business contract. And what we're doing and what we have been doing for the past 9 years is taking this piece of technology, transforming it, and bringing it into the digital age. And so we also believe that the business contract is kind of the atomic unit of business. And so by innovating on this, we're actually setting an incredible new foundation for the entirety of business and commerce.
It's amazing. So can you talk a little bit about, let's go back to 2014. Where were you in your life and how did you meet Jason and come up with the idea for Ironclad?
I was a software engineer at a company called Palantir, where I worked on military and intelligence applications of big data and AI. Before that, I did my undergraduate and master's at MIT in computer science and physics. So in 2014, I had left Palantir. I was really interested in applying ideas that help make software incredible to other industries. I believe that the way that engineers kind of use technology to innovate themselves, AI being a good example here in generative AI, was kind of a good precedent for how other industries would innovate collaboration and the future of work. And legal kind of just spoke to me. So
can you talk a little bit about how did legal speak to you?
So I started...
Legal doesn't speak to a lot of people. Did you have some experience with it, or was it just intuitively kind of observing their craft? You were fascinated by it?
Both.
Okay.
So I had friends who were lawyers at Palantir. I made friends with the legal team, great people there, and I got to know them early in my time at Palantir. And so naturally, after leaving Palantir, sort of wanted to talk to them, talk to my friends who were in legal, and just got kind of absorbed by how the way they thought about their work was so similar to the way, as a software engineer, I thought about my work.
Right. And your original idea... So the way the story was told to me was Jason told me that there was some engineer from Palantir who was one of the 10 people in 2014 in the Bay Area interested in legal tech. And it was some guy named Cai, and he wanted to build the GitHub for lawyers. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay.
And the 10 people part is also accurate. Back in 2014, I was like, I need to learn about all the people who are interested in this. Thinking it would be like a several months process. And like the next week I was like, okay, I've met everyone.
Oh my gosh. You guys met at a Stanford lecture, is that right?
We met at a Stanford lecture,
okay.
Yeah.
And then you started working out of a motorcycle garage or something like that? Is that what happened? Or how did it go from meeting each other to working together?
I like the motorcycle garage story that Jason tells. I think the part that he forgets about or ignores is we worked out of there for like an hour. Because it was so clearly a bad idea. So yeah, Jason was parking his motorcycle and the motorcycle garage was thinking, hey, the Silicon Valley thing, the startup thing, let's make a co-working space. And so they turned the upstairs area into a co-working space. And it was just way too loud to get any work done at all. So within an hour, we were like, yeah, we can't work here.
Go to a coffee shop from there.
We actually ended up at this like weird art studio, this like maker co-working art studio. So definitely stayed a little
more complimentary to what you guys are trying to do.
Definitely more quiet. Yeah.
So you guys get together and you spend the first couple years. I mean, before we met you, you guys had been working for 3 years. Can you talk about kind of before you guys raised your Series A, what you guys were working on and some of the twists and turns that you guys experienced?
The first domain name was ironclad.ai. We had this thesis that AI was going to go through a moment in like the next 3 to 5 years or something. And that by building the foundation for legal, for digital contracting, we would be perfectly positioned in 3 to 5 years-ish to take advantage and innovate the practice of law with this new revolution in AI. And then 3 to 5 years later, we met you and we pitched you on, in 3 to 5 years, AI is going to go through a moment.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, I remember meeting you for the first time in our San Francisco office with, I think it was you, Jason, Voss, and myself. And Voss and I thought we were walking into a legal tech pitch. But it wasn't a legal tech pitch. It wasn't even an AI pitch. There was AI kind of at the end. But that was when kind of enterprise collaboration was having its moment. And what was very obvious to us was you were picking the contract as this core object of something that everyone inside the company touches. And you were building the tooling for everyone inside the company to collaborate more efficiently, starting with the general counsel, but salespeople, HR people, procurement people, to be able to collaborate with the general counsel so they weren't working out of their inbox. They were actually having this workflow happen. And I think that's what got us super excited. And then there was some footnote, some asterisk that was like, oh, by the way, we're going to have all this legal data of how people work together and the content of the contracts. But we didn't really talk about that for the first few years after. It was all about collaboration. And so you guys have built an incredible business with great customers, great logos. What was the moment where, I think every board meeting we talked about, should we do something with AI? We even saw emerging companies who were just focused on that, but didn't have the data or the workflow. Do you remember when, you decided, hey, we need to actually start investing in this?
Collaboration was having a moment when we first met, and it continues to be fundamental to Ironclad. The contract is like this collaborative moment that people come together in across different functions. It's not just the legal team, right? But we were also starting to lay the groundwork for AI. I mean, you gave us our annual plan framework, right? Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yes.
But I don't know if you remember, like company intent number 4 or 5 was always like build the legal AI system or something like that.
Yeah. No, totally.
So in the background, we were always working on it. And I think we had like several debates in, the boardroom saying like, okay, we need to up the investment here. We need to like lower the investment here. But I think what that means is we've been investing as Ironclad, we've been investing in AI since at least 2017.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think, but it was more preparing for the moment, right? And then there was a moment where
we kept thinking there was a moment.
User-facing features are going to really kind of emerge. You guys were a company that did have years of work, data, customers, and everyone says, oh, we got to allocate resources to this new generative AI set of user experiences to solve problems for our customers. How did you guys practically do that inside the company? Did everyone start working on it right away? Did you start with a smaller team and then do proof of concepts and then start adding? Like, what was what advice would you give to the person who's sitting there with a customer base that's demanding it? They have the data to be able to do it. They have the infrastructure to be able to do it, but how do you staff it? And how do you kind of create milestones around it?
We had this organizational inertia, and we had to overcome that inertia. And to be clear, I am part of the organization. And so a lot of that inertia actually came from me, despite me being one of the people working on it. So we launched this thing called Ironclad Contract AI a few weeks ago.
What does it do?
It answers all the questions you have about contracts in your organization.
Okay. So I'm a lawyer. I'm sitting at my desk today. I open Ironclad AI. What was my workflow before Ironclad AI, and what do I do now?
Have I ever promised a customer ever that I would keep their data in the EU? Your solution right now is either maybe craft some like keyword searches and hope you hit something, or just assign an intern or a team of interns to read every contract, or what are the variations of different data residency requirements we have in all of our customer facing contracts. With Contract AI, you can just type in the question and it'll use the concepts around AI agents and LLMs to actually answer that question for you and show you the chain of thought and reasoning.
And this is live with customers now.
This is live with customers now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
So you said something recently that stuff that you thought would take years is now taking a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know if you talk to a lot of folks in the space, there's so much experimentation happening that people are kind of loath to forecast where this is going, other than it's going to be transformative, hard to recognize. We got to run these experiments. But if you look at your domain and you've launched Contracts AI, and you think, I'll kind of give you two bogeys. One is a year from now, one is 5 years from now in the legal context. What are some possibilities that you're excited about of experiences that you guys are going to enable for folks to interact around contracts?
Right now, Ironclad Contract AI is really capable of answering these questions that the legal team has around, variations in language, what they've agreed to across a certain set of like industries or something like that. It even does weird things like help you justify a raise. Like it'll do that. It'll come up with a creative way of doing that. But as we add tools and capabilities to Contract AI, it's going to be able to do more and more and more things. So looking out a year from now, my hope is that Ironclad Contract AI will be able to intelligently answer questions around like supply chain management or things like that. Be able to look in your contractual obligations, try to anticipate, a natural disaster or like extreme weather phenomenon happening that was unexpected, and help you answer your questions as a business, as an organization, about what your exposure there is based on the contract, the data locked inside of your contracts.
How do you think what you're doing, because this is highly relevant to other companies in this context, affects the way that Ironclad's platform, you guys have tons of integrations with folks like Salesforce, DocuSign, other players in the ecosystem. How will these platforms interact with each other given this context?
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting. I think first we're going to have to learn as humans how to interact with these new set of features. And then we're going to have to learn how those AI agents like interact with each other.
Is there going to be a whole new set of APIs and interfaces between these apps?
Almost certainly. Yeah. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
So a topic that's starting to come back into the forefront is AI agents. And this is an area that we're really pushing on.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Rivet and kind of the work you guys are doing this? Okay, perfect. Yeah.
We started working on Ironclad Contract AI a few months ago at this point. And the idea was basically like, let's just take a big swing. We know one of the biggest problems confronting our users is they want to be able to understand and answer questions about their contractual obligations across their entire set of contracts. And we were like, okay, retrieval augmented generation, RAG, is this thing that's been around. It's if you've seen chat with your PDF, like that's the concept that's being used. And so we're like, at a bare minimum, we're going to have RAG. But what is the ceiling here? And so we just started working on the ceiling. We drew inspiration from LangChain, AutoGPT, Baby AGI, and decided to try to build this agent that could use Ironclad to answer any question. And it didn't go very well. Like within like 2 weeks, I was like, okay, never mind. We're just doing retrieval augmented generation.
I think I was talking to you at that point and you were low. You were kind of like, that's not working.
Yeah.
And I think you gave me a demo that froze and you kind of like hung up the phone on me at some point. Or hung up the Zoom and was like,
One of our engineers, Andy, didn't give up.
Yeah.
And over the weekend, maybe the weekend after we talked, he came back after the weekend. He's like, I built this thing, Rivet, and I refactored our entire agent into it, and I think we can make it work now.
Wow.
And I was like, this is a crazy idea. Visual programming languages are like, I don't know, I've seen it work in some domains, but I've always been suspect of them. And then I actually tried using it, and it was a total game changer. All of a sudden, we went from like putting breakpoints and logging what the AI agent was thinking about, and just like going through reams and reams of like logs and code and just getting utterly confused about why things were breaking, to suddenly it was like, oh, that's why it's breaking. It's right there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to change it. I'm going to experiment with it. I'm going to iterate quickly. And we were able to suddenly add skills to our AI agent. We were able to stabilize the agent loop. And then we didn't hit any more walls after that. We just kept like going. And at some point we were like, okay, this started as a experiment to like see how far we could go.
Yeah.
We haven't reached a limit. We're just going to stop now. We're going to productize something because we really need to productize something. And that's how Rivet was born. That's how our Ironclad Contract AI was released with the feature set it has now. And that's why I'm so bullish on over the next year. We're just going to see the capabilities of that feature massively explode, because we actually stopped ourselves from exploring the bounds of this technology, because we were like, we know the bounds are well above what's necessary to be game changing in our industry.
And what's kind of the future of Rivet?
We are excited for Rivet to be part of the LLM tooling infrastructure.
Yeah.
We think it's really powerful that it's open source already. Within the first week, we had like 1,000 stars on GitHub. Within the first 24 hours, we had our first like genuine community pull request. I think there are 5 plugins for it that have already released, from LM evaluation tooling to Assembly AI is adding a plugin for their large foundation models around if And we're in a phase right now where everything is so new that usually when you think of a new technique, you like hold it close to the chest and you say, all right, if no one's discovered this, then it's non-obvious. But right now, like the discoveries people are making are mostly obvious.
Yes.
And like other people are making them in parallel.
Yeah.
So by being part of the open source community, we can share those ideas and we can actually advance the concepts around LLMs and AI agents much more quickly than anyone working, in closed quarters can.
I think one of the things that everyone is dealing with, across our portfolio, I know across the boards I'm on, the question is, when everyone's having their kind of generative AI moment, can you give us a little more detail on how that happened at Ironclad, and maybe extrapolate a little bit to how other people can learn from the way you guys, it seemed like from the outside in, went from kind of day-to-day business of growing your company to repositioning the company to take advantage of this innovation wave?
Funny enough, we launched Ironclad Contract AI a few weeks ago, and at the launch event, I think I said something like, when I discovered what AI was now capable of, my first thought was, it's time. But yeah, no, my first thought was not, it's time. My first thought was like, oh fuck. And part of this was, well, maybe to back up, I was, in the office. One of our teammates, James, comes over to me and says, hey, Kai, have you looked at GPT-3 recently? And I was like, yeah, I looked at it. Maybe not recently, but, I looked at it. How much could it have changed? And he's like, no, man, you have to look at it again. The legal engineering team has been looking at it all morning. They're obsessed with it. And that made my ears perk up because, as you know, our legal engineering team is kind of like our secret weapon.
Yep.
It's like great people, former lawyers, former consultants, and
they're the canary in the coal mine of like, this thing could be working.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not going to get hoodwinked by technology being applied to legal in particular.
Yep.
And so I went over, talked to a couple of legal engineers. They showed me what they were doing. And that was, when my first thought was not, it's time. It was like, because I'd written up this like huge document and was getting ready to present how our AI strategy was going to work. I thought like there were like these 5 points, we were going to do them. It's going to take the next year, and then we were going to have leadership in AI.
Yeah.
And I was staring at this like clear proof that strategy that I just labored over was just not going to work. And so that's kind of what got us started, was just seeing this technology. And we immediately started prototyping something. And I think that is maybe one of the key things for people working on this. Like, you've probably thought about what the AI moment means for your customer base.
Yep.
So like focus on the customer problem and then just like take a massive swing for the fences, right?
What do you mean by massive swing for the fences?
Right now with generative AI, I feel like a lot of people see it as a hammer.
Yeah.
And a hammer looking for a nail.
Yeah.
You see, okay, cool. Retrieval augmented generation, RAG. We can make chat with your PDF. Like, what can we do with this? That's like classic hammer looking for a nail. And you'll find a nail.
Yeah.
But, instead think about the thesis of your company and think about how you've been thinking 3 to 5 years from now, like AI will have a moment and we will be the best positioned to do this thing. For us, one of those big things was AI will be negotiating contracts with you.
Yeah. So you're saying like, don't just bolt it on. Like when people took web and were like, oh, we can do it on mobile, and they just copy and pasted and said, now you can see it on mobile, versus rethinking the entire experience because you now have this new device in front of you. So you're saying, look at the capability of this, think about your customers, and don't just copy paste.
Start with the customer problem. Look at especially the customer problems where you're like 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to do this like massive thing, and ask yourself, actually, can we do this today?
I think the other reason you have to do that is the reality of the software markets is that the way people are buying is different. We went through this whole, everyone grew when companies are growing on seat-based pricing, but now you really have to price on value, consumption, usage, and the ROI that you're delivering. And the good news for that is generative AI enables those experiences, because the whole premise is that you're taking, one person and giving them an Iron Man suit of whatever that function is and making them 10 to 20x more productive. And so I think a lot of it is not just aspirational, it's also existential. Like if you don't do it,
absolutely,
no one's going to buy your product.
People need to be embracing generative AI because, we've started saying, or for a while we've said, AI is not going to replace lawyers, but lawyers who use AI are absolutely going to replace lawyers who don't. And I think those massive efficiency gains are like actually happening.
Yes.
We talked about AI for negotiation, which was the first thing that we launched with generative AI earlier this year. We've seen companies negotiating 20 times faster with the technology.
Wow.
Maybe to be more concrete, like one of our customers, Orange Theory Fitness. Do you know Orange Theory Fitness?
I've heard of Orange Theory Fitness.
Okay.
I've actually been to Orange Theory Fitness.
Nice.
Quite painful.
Yes.
They're good at what they do.
They get you into the orange. So their business went bananas a few years ago, and their membership agreements just like proliferated and became like every state, every county had a different membership agreement. So
Got it.
Charlene on their team was tasked with consolidating their membership agreements down to one thing. Which should have taken months because there were so many variations that she had to consider. Using Ironclad AI and the generative AI capabilities, she was able to do this in less than a week.
Wow.
And then another company, Acrelus, did a similar thing in terms of adapting their template language and saw actually I think a 50% reduction in turnaround time or processing time. Even as their number of contracts exploded.
And are they feeding this back to you? Like you're observing the ROI. Are they also like having that moment themselves where it's like, this would have taken me forever?
This is happening. This is happening across, I think, a lot of different functions within a business, right? In legal, we're seeing it a lot across our entire customer base of people saying, I can now do 10x more than I could do before. Internally ourselves, right, where our brand design team has fully embraced Midjourney, and I've been talking to them, and they're saying our Ironclad's brand expression is quite expensive to produce. But we've been able to 100x their output.
Wow.
In this very expensive to produce brand style. We're producing custom illos for every single piece of content we put out there because they can do it. Podcasting, right? We're bringing podcast production in-house because of systems like Descript that just make it so much cheaper. So I think a lot of different areas are seeing this 10x improvement, legal being absolutely one of the first to see it with Ironclad. And so it's not just a matter of these products are going to get 10x better. Ironclad with generative AI is 10x better than any other product on the market, but it's also teams are getting 10x better. And so if you're at a company that has a generative AI policy that says you can't use generative AI, I feel like you probably need to get out of that company because you're going to get left behind. Every company
it needs to become a generative company. Every function needs to have their platform that gives them the 10 to 20x return. What are the risks to all this? What keeps you up at night?
Turn that question back. What keeps you up at night?
Any experimentation phase of technology, there's going to be things that really work, and then the things that don't work, especially in this context, I think is going to have to do with privacy, the unintended consequences of, where the data is going, what the source data is for the model, creating experiences for people that were just unintended, right? It's always unintended consequences. I mean, I think there's obviously a whole part of the world that's going to use the technology nefariously, and that's something that's in one bucket. But I think the experimentation is going to yield good outcomes and unintended consequences of bad ones, and how we respond to that. But I think that's also just how innovation works. And so society's always dealt with this, right? Like how do we manage? I think it's overall net positive, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth sailing all the way. And so I think the fear is that the unintended consequences lead people to slow down on the innovation, which I don't think is the right thing. I think the right thing is to lean into it and figure out how to manage it. So, but I'm overall optimistic and excited about it.
Yeah. No, I like your take on it.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Definitely with you.
Feel free to use it on your next podcast.
Will do. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of fear around, like, it can now do my job function. Like, am I going to lose my job? But I think human society, if we look at like technological revolutions over the past centuries, it changes the face of human society. And I think generative AI will change the face of human society. But what we're left with on the other side is human society. And we get used to it. I think the benefits that generative AI can bring far outweigh the negatives, but it is going to be a bumpy ride. Yeah.
I think it's a requirement to lead from the front. Were you and Jason aligned on the generative moment and what needed to be done, or was there some arguing that happened in that context? With the caveat that my observation of you two as founders is one of the things I love about you is you guys have a deep amount of respect for each other. You have different skill sets and capabilities that are very complementary, but you guys are also not afraid to debate and try and do what's best for the company.
Jason and I were very, very aligned on, like, we need to take this disruptive technology, this disruptive innovation, and lean into it.
Yeah.
There's no authoritative like textbooks on how to use generative AI. Like, unfortunately, one of the best places to get information right now is Twitter, which is horrifying to me.
X.
You mean, X. Yeah. But yeah, it's the best. X, Twitter, whatever we call it, is the best, one of the best places to get information. Yeah. But there's also a ton of misinformation there. And so I think a lot of the top level alignment that Jason and I had and the entire team had on pushing and taking this moment and making it our own was maybe obscured by also like the details, or maybe guided the details of like, people are like, should we be training our own large foundation model? Should we be like taking OpenAI at its own game? Like, what are our moats now? What are not our moats? Like, there's been so many trends, and a new trend comes up every week. So I think the devil's been in the details, and certainly working through that.
And I think that's normal for a platform shift with the experimentation that's happening.
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake people can make is not engaging in it and just watching versus getting your hands dirty and kind of playing with the raw materials, because that's 100%. How Rivet emerged, right? It was because you guys made the decision to jump in
100%
and start building, and then you ran into roadblocks and you had to solve those problems, and those become the ingredients to your moat actually over time.
Yeah. Right? No, I heard someone talk about how right now people are like building tools for using large foundation models, and compare the tools that are being built to everything that came before React in web development.
Yeah.
React was built by Facebook because they'd experienced how difficult it was to build a complex application on the front end. Similarly, all of these tools that are coming out around large foundation models suffer from the problem of very few people have built very complex or sophisticated agents with large foundation models. So it's really hard to project into the future and say, okay, these are the problems that are going to hit. So that's part of what makes me so excited about Rivet, makes us so excited about Rivet, is it's actually been built because
out of necessity.
Out of necessity.
You had to,
and what makes it so like such a no-brainer for us to open source is we've benefited from kind of the open dialogue that we've had with other teams confronting these issues. And we think that Rivet is a great place for people to come together and share those best practices.
Cai, thank you so much for joining us today on Spotlight On. We look forward to watching your success and hopefully have you on the show again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
In the next episode of Spotlight on AI, we're bringing you a conversation between Rich Wong, partner at Accel, and Checker's co-founder and CEO, Daniel Yanis.
Quite early on, we said our mission should be to be different from the rest of the industry and make this industry better, because we believe with technology we can improve fairness and help businesses decide who are the best candidates for them.